So today we're going to get started in a more traditional sense of what we're going to talk about and kind of the general program for the class, where I actually come up and I lecture and we get started and we go through some major concepts, and then we'll get into actually some demonstration on the computers today. This, however, is still a little bit outside of the general wheelhouse of learning software. Next class we'll start in the world of photography, and we'll talk about taking pictures and composition and all that sort of thing. Today, however, I think it's relevant to talk about kind of the bigger picture stuff. And this is the conglomeration of a bunch of thoughts that I have relating to the world of architecture, relating to your world, relating to the way that we interact with the internet, and kind of how you exist in an online world. And I think it's important to kind of talk through that. I also want to talk about organizing your life. If you start at the beginning of the semester with an organization strategy, that's much better than at the end of the semester when life is chaotic. So we start this very early in the semester to kind of go through it. So this is about technology, design, architecture, and it's kind of an overview of all those kinds of things. So remember, I do have all of these slides posted. I have links to the various things that I talk about today, so you can go back and look at it a little bit later on. So let's start first by talking about organizing your digital life. All right, and what does that mean? It basically means keeping your files and your computer and your phone and everything in sync, organized, backed up, so that you feel safe and secure in where all your stuff is. Right? You can find what you need when you need it. That's an ideal thing to think through. So there's two different ways of organizing your files on your computer. There's the flat and very fat file system, and there's a hierarchical system. And chances are you use one or the other of those systems already, right? And there are certainly advantages and disadvantages to each, and we're going to talk about what those are. Come on in. So in a flat file system, we have something set up like this, where we have our basic documents folder, which is that big place that we start, right? Microsoft, Windows, OS 10, they all have that documents folder. Sometimes it's called My Docs, sometimes it's documents, whatever. It's a place where you store your stuff, so to speak. Beyond that, in a flat system, maybe you divide it up very simply by what program you're working in. So it might be something like Illustrator, and then all your files for Illustrator are going to go in one folder. Okay? That may be certainly a strategy, right? And that would be a flat file system. The advantages and disadvantages of a flat file system: they're organized by similar file types, so it's pretty easy if you know, oh, this is an AutoCAD file, I just have to look in my AutoCAD folder, right? Chances are it's going to be there. So there's some logic to it. The problem with this is that it's difficult to keep different projects separate. Let's say you currently have a job where you work as a draftsperson in an office, and you have school and you're taking stuff at school. Right? If all your AutoCAD files go into the same folder, it's pretty hard to keep your work and your school separate from each other. Maybe you have personal projects too. It all gets kind of muddled together. So maybe it's harder to find files. The other problem is you can end up with lots and lots of files in the same folder. Right? My dad is notorious for this. He has a file for Word, and he probably has 5,000 documents in there that are Word, and he can never find anything because he doesn't remember what he named it. We'll get to naming in just a second. That's a problem, because you want it when you want it, and you want to be able to find it easily. So the alternative to that would be a hierarchy system, right? Where we try to establish something and then organize it based on this set standards. Right? So in this example, and this is obviously what I use to kind of organize my work, we start with that same root documents folder, right up here. There's the documents. But then we break it down into subcategories. It might be something like school. It might be something like personal. Right? Inside of those school folder, for example, we might break it further into certain classes. Right? So you're in 131. You're in 221, whatever it is. Right? You have a folder for that particular class. Inside of that class folder, so in this case we have the Archie 135 folder, right? We might break it down into assignments and into exercises, depending on what we're doing, and then all the files for a particular exercise or a particular assignment would go into one of those file folders. So the advantages and disadvantages is it's very easy to keep your life separate. You have work files. They go in a work folder with a bunch of subfolders. You have your school life. All of that exists in your school folder. Your personal stuff exists in your personal folder. And that helps in this organization file. The other thing that happens is when you start using programs that use referenced files, which you're going to find a lot in the world of InDesign, and we'll talk at length about how InDesign works and why reference files matter, where you keep all those reference files really makes a difference. So you want to make sure that all of those exist in one folder, easy to find, easy to back up. Right? So something like this can help. So let's say we were working on your flash drive. Right? We might have the root of your flash drive. Inside of that, we might have maybe a Dropbox folder, maybe a resources folder. In the past, I always emphasized Dropbox as a great place to back up your work. I actually taught how to set up a portable Dropbox app on your flash drive so that it would back up your files. Because we've switched to Windows 10, we can use OneDrive, which is the Microsoft version of Dropbox. All of you have a school account with OneDrive right now. You may not know it, which gives you 15 gigs for free, which is a lot of storage space, which is great. And it's already set up on these computers, and because you log into an account, you can use it to back up your flash drive. So we'll talk about backup later on. So Dropbox probably changes to OneDrive in this particular example, but the concept is certainly still the same. Inside of your Dropbox folder or inside of your OneDrive folder, you're going to have various class projects. There's a bunch of classes there. Inside the class, you might have assignments, exercises. You might have your final portfolio, etc. You're trying to organize your digital files. Okay? Not just one place where you drop everything. Okay? Subfolders, good thing. The next thing is you want to think about how you name your files. Okay? All too often we have files called drawing 1, drawing 2, drawing 3, drawing 4. Well, in 2 years, are you going to remember which drawing file a particular drawing was? No. So we want to name our files. There are a lot of ways of trying to establish a naming scheme for how you name your files. I'm going to show you an example of one. This is the one that I used in grad school to try to keep my files organized with my various studio classes, etc. You don't have to use it. You can adapt it, you can change it, but I want you to at least have thought about how do we name our files and how do we organize our files. Okay? So in this context, I start with a prefix, and that prefix identifies what class I'm in. Okay? And the way that I came up with it, I took the first letter of the subject, so in this case it would be architecture, it starts with A. Then I took the course number, right? Let's say you're in 121, it would be 121. And then I put the first name or the first letter of the last name of the professor who taught it. Now, in this class, chances are you're not, or in this school, chances are you're not going to take the same class over and over again. When you move on to grad school or you move on to Berkeley and you go to some of the advanced studios, you may take the same studio several times. In grad school, for example, you take a 201 studio 3 times. So because, did you take it 3 times? Yeah, 3 times, because then there's thesis at the end. So you take it 3 times, it would be A201 for each one of those. So you needed an extra little identifier. So I put the last name of the professor there. It's up to you. Okay? Then I end, what goes in the middle, I don't really care. Okay? But then I end with an addition and a version. How many people historically number their files? Right? You have something, a few of you are tentatively raising your hands, right? But it's tradition for us to be working on something, oh, this is version 1, so we number it 1. And then we do something and we save it as version 2 or version 3. Okay? I took this a step further when I was in grad school. I had the addition, which was big changes, and then I had a letter for the version, which was small changes. So the idea here is, let's say you're working in Rhino and you're doing a rendering. Right? Those of you that have taken Rhino, you understand what I'm talking about. You get that first rendering out, it's OK. You save it, 02A, right? Then you tweak some settings and you try to make it better. You save it as 02B. It's essentially the exact same rendering, you just tweaked a few settings. Right? And it allows you to save this version history so that if something doesn't turn out, you can go back to the one before. Okay? Big changes. Change my design. Right? That's an addition change. So you're going to do a big number change, 03, 04, 05, etc. So if I were to combine all of this together, right, I'd have the first part right here that represents the class and what class I'm in. I'd have a bunch of stuff in the middle that I don't really care about, right? And then right here at the end, I'd have the edition and the version, right? Dot extension, whatever it is, .jpeg, .dwg, etc. Right? That has to exist as well. So again, that's not the kind of thing that you have to do exactly what I'm saying. But if you think about how you name your files, you can at least find, oh, these are all the files that go with the Digital Tools for Architects class, because they all say A135. I know, because I named them. You know what I mean? Does that make some sense? Okay. So if you're going to upload anything online, okay, this is where it gets a little tricky. It's better not to have spaces in your file names. And you've probably noticed this before. Let's say you were browsing online and you went to click on a PDF and you downloaded the PDF and you see the file name and it has a bunch of weird characters in it, percents and stuff like that. Okay? That's because the original file that somebody uploaded had spaces. If you type in a space in your web bar at the top of Chrome or Firefox or whatever, notice it searches Google rather than going to a web address. Spaces aren't allowed online. So if you get in the habit of taking the spaces out, you know you're always safe and your file name won't look weird when you post it online. If you're just saving the files to your computer, you can use spaces. It doesn't make any difference. But it's important to note that distinction. So if you're going to the web, it's not going to prohibit you from uploading the file. It's just going to add weird extra characters. Okay? Hyphens, underscores are great in file names. You can use those. File names shouldn't use any special characters like slashes, question marks, or periods. And periods are a little tricky because our operating systems will let us put periods in. They won't prohibit it. But sometimes your operating system can get confused because generally speaking it looks for file name dot whatever the extension is. So if you're opening an InDesign file, it would be .indd, for example. And that tells the computer, when I double click on this file, open up InDesign for me. Okay? But if you have different, let's say you had dot something and then dot something, right? So you had two periods, the operating system might get confused as to what am I supposed to open this in, right? So you want to be aware of using the period as kind of a risky move. It can work, but it's a little bit more on the risky side. So then we move from names, organizations, into backing up your files. How many people back up their files right now? Okay, so 4, 5, 6 people. Okay, 6 of, let's call it 30. It's not too good of percentages. Okay, we're going to try to change that today. And I apologize in advance because this will be a little bit of the doom and gloom speech, right? Because I'm trying to make you do this. Okay, so I might exaggerate a little bit. So I adapted this strategy from a guild of multimedia artists called the Pixel Corps. This is what they use to store their files. They don't consider a file safe until they meet these principles. It's called 3-2-1 backup. Okay? So number one, we have to have a copy of our file that is our primary working copy. Right? That's the one that we're working on, we're doing things to, etc. It's the one that's open on our computer. Then we have to have 2 backup copies. Right? So 3 total files to consider it backed up. Okay? Those 3 files should be on 2 different mediums. Okay? A hard drive and a flash drive. Right? A hard drive and a DVD. A hard drive and in the cloud. Right? 2 different places, or 2 different mediums. Right? Because mediums fail. Right? We have a big magnetic problem and it erases all the hard drives. If you have it on a flash drive, you're safe. Right? You get the idea. You're protecting yourself. I used to say burn it to a CD or DVD, but I don't think anybody does that anymore. Right? That's pretty old school. And then you want to make sure. So we got 3 copies of your files, 2 different mediums. The last one is one should not be with you. It should be off-site somewhere. Right? And this is where cloud syncing stuff is huge. And I know you guys are aware of stuff going on. You're seeing that the trend is all this cloud stuff. Right? And all your files exist in the cloud and life is great. This kind of started a long time ago with a company called Dropbox. Anybody heard of Dropbox before? Yeah? Okay. So Dropbox was on the forefront of doing this. And they gave you 2 gigs for free. And it was a really big deal about 7 years ago. Okay. And that was because you could store stuff on a server somewhere that wasn't with you. Okay. We've improved. We've got lots of better services now for this offsite portion of it. But you should have 3 copies of your files. right? You should have 2 different mediums, and you should have 1 off-site. That's the ideal form of backup. If you do that, it's very unlikely that you'll lose your files. OK, so you're right here in ET 103. How do you do this backup principle? OK, so what we're going to do is you're going to have 1 primary copy that's on your flash drive or your hard drive that you're working on. OK, we're going to take and sync your files either to OneDrive or to Dropbox or something like that, which puts 1 copy of your file off-site and in a different form of medium because it's up in the cloud. OK, so that's good. We have a second copy, so we've met 2 of the 3 things. OK, the last one is I'm going to ask you when you get to your home computer or your laptop, install OneDrive or install Dropbox, and make sure that that copy gets back to your home computer as well. OK, so we now have 3 copies of your file, 1 on your flash drive here, 1 in the cloud, and 1 on your home computer. 3 copies, 2 different mediums, right? One's here on your flash drive, one's in the cloud. Actually, 3 different because one's on your hard drive at home, right? And 1 is off-site because it's not here. So in terms of backing up your files, if it doesn't happen automatically, you won't do it. OK, it just doesn't happen. So for example, if I said there's no syncing platform, you can't sync anything, and every day when you go home, I want you to take your flash drive, I want you to plug it into your computer, and I want you to make a backup copy of all your stuff. Do you think you'd do it every time you got home? Nope. You wouldn't because you get lazy and you don't do it. So it has to be automatic. Okay? If we start talking about backing up your whole computer or something like that, we can use these cloud services, but maybe you have an external hard drive. Each, whether it's OS 10 or it's Windows 10, each has their own built-in backup software that you can just enable, plug in an external hard drive. Maybe you have a time capsule where the hard drive's attached to your router, and it just does it magically. OK, that's great. You're backed up. Life is good. This is for your home computer. Okay? There are some aftermarket solutions if you're interested in more specific things. There are programs that will copy your entire hard drive. So let's say you're working on your laptop and you hear this really funny little when you turn it on. Right? That might be a sign that your hard drive's about to die. How many people have had a hard drive die before? I did. Right? I had one semester, this was probably 2 years ago. I was sitting in my office over there working on my computer. Submit button for grades. This was in December for fall grades. Submit. Right after I did that, dead hard drive. Dead as a doornail. No, you can't recover it. Nothing. It was completely dead. Okay? So it happens. And if it hasn't happened to you yet, it will happen to you. Right? I can promise it will. Right? At some point, it will happen. And so you just want to protect yourself from that. Okay? So in that case, if you have the computer, you hear it going, that's a bad sign. Get another hard drive, use one of these programs, copy the exact contents of one hard drive to the other, swap out the drives, toss the bad drive, right? Or green recycle the drive, whatever. Okay? So anyway, these are a variety of softwares out there. You can do a Google search and find a bunch of them anyway. Okay? Online backup. Dropbox, 2 gigs for free. If you do a bunch of their hoops, you can get 16, 20 gigs for free, right? That's nice. Google Drive, most of you have Gmail accounts, 15 gigs for free. That's good too. Works really well for your home computer to have Google Drive. Not so well in the lab. There's not really a way to use Google Drive other than to go on, download all your files, put them on the desktop, and then upload them again before you leave. Okay? So it's not my favorite from working in the lab standpoint. OneDrive has been around for a while. It's Microsoft's version of this. Because we're on Windows 10 and we have this stuff built in and you guys are all logging in, I'm going to kind of shift us into that strategy. Also, if you have your DVC email, you can get 15 gigs for free, which is more than the 5 gigs that they give you for free if you have a standard Outlook account. So it's worth kind of using that to your advantage. So I'm going to encourage us to use that this semester. If you're doing your home computer, a company like Carbonite will back up your entire hard drive all the time for you, and it's about $50 a year. If you're really worried about security, we'll get to security a little bit later on, you can actually run your own cloud service if you have your own server so that you are completely independent of all these other companies and their terms of use and everything else. You can just have it for you. So it is there, depending on how paranoid you are. Okay. So, backup every night, right? Well, guess what? If you're syncing your files through OneDrive or something, it's backing up every time you save your file or every time your file changes. So that's even better, right? Backing up every week. You get where this is going, right? Backing up every month. You get. Okay? This one I like to pause on, though. Okay? When you finish a semester, chances are some of the work that you do in a given semester is going to end up in your portfolio someday. It's going to end up being a valuable work. You want to go back and you want to take those pieces and put them in 4 years. You want them to go in your portfolio or whatever. If you do semester backups, it's a good thing, right? So you take all the files that you created in one semester, you put them in one place. Maybe you put them on an external hard drive, etc. In the old days, I would say you burn them on a DVD, but you probably don't. Right? Most computers don't even, the newer ones don't even have drives to do that anymore. So put it on a flash drive. I don't know, put it somewhere, and then put it somewhere safe so that you can go back and get it. When I was working on my portfolio for grad school, which you guys will actually see my grad school portfolio a little bit later on when we talk about the portfolio so that you're going to do in this class. When I was working on it, I had a great project that I did in, I think it was 11B, which is like the equivalent of kind of 121-ish here. I had a great project, loved it. Right? Went back, I had one blurry photo of it. That was it. Couldn't find the drawings, couldn't find anything else. So I couldn't use that project as part of my portfolio because I didn't save it. Right? So I'm encouraging you to do this because then you can always go back and you can always get it. Right? And then we move on to the backup yearly. You get the idea. So I'm paranoid about losing stuff. Okay? And this is probably the ultimate exaggeration of things, but this is actually something that I do. Okay? So I have a bunch of photos, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 or 60,000 photos that I've taken. I got really into photography a while back, and so I take lots of pictures. I have 2 kids. I take lots of pictures of them. Right? I have pictures of them being born and all that sort of thing. Okay? If my house were to burn down, flood, whatever, I would be absolutely devastated if I lost the digital pictures that I have of my kids. That would be catastrophic. Okay? So I'm really, really paranoid about it. So this is not something that's automated. It's not something that's easy, but it's something that I do to make sure that I'm safe. And that is periodically, every 6 months, at least every year, I have an external hard drive. I plug it into my computer, and I make a backup of every photo that I've taken. Okay, and I use like the iCloud photos and all that stuff, so I have backups that are out there. But this is for my own peace of mind. Right? I put it on that hard drive, I walk into my bank, I open up my safety deposit box, and I stick my hard drive in there. Right? Well, guess what? They're safe now. Right? And if somebody went in and broke into my bank and somehow managed to get into my safety deposit box, they would be thoroughly disappointed. Right? As much as I would rather have gold bars in my safety deposit box, there's just a hard drive. Okay? But I know it's an extreme example, but I know that those things that are irreplaceable are going to be saved there. Okay? And that's something that's really critical. I'll tell you one more story. I love stories. I love to go off on tangents because I think it helps you remember, right, the things that I'm talking about. Okay? So this is a story about my wife. She was growing up. She was in high school. She was away on a trip. She was actually in Germany. And she got a call from her stepdad. And her stepdad said, she lived in the Central Valley. She lived in Yuba City. Her stepdad got on the phone, she's in Germany, and says, honey, the levee's going to break and our house is going to flood. I have an hour. What do you want out of your room? Think about that. If you got a phone call right now and somebody asked you, what do you want out of your house? You have one shot. What do you pick? Right? It's a good question. It's a good exercise to go through. I hope it never happens to you. Right? The good news is, for her, the levee broke on the opposite side and it flooded Marysville instead of Yuba City, so she got to keep all her stuff. But all those people in Marysville got screwed. Okay? So the point is, you want to really think about what do you have that's important. And if it's that important, find a way to back it up. Right? In the digital world, it's easier. We can store it off-site. We can grab it on a hard drive. We can store it somewhere. You can take a hard drive. You can take it to your parents' house. Right? The point is it's somewhere else. But I ask you these things and I tell you these stories because I want you to think about it. Right? I've had students come to me at the end of the semester when their car was broken into 1 week before finals and their laptop was stolen and say, can I give you a hug? And I said, why do you want to give me a hug? And they said, because you gave that lecture and I backed up all my work and I didn't lose a single thing when my laptop was stolen, right? And I can still finish my 221 class. I can still finish my skyscraper, right? I sat down on my chair. I snapped my flash drive off. These are all true stories. These happen, right? I snapped my flash drive off. I broke it 1 week before finals, right? I had backups. I was okay, right? It will happen to you. Whether it happens this year or next year or in 5 years, it will happen. So just be prepared. Okay, doom and gloom over. So let's talk about calendars. Okay, how many people keep a calendar? That's pretty good. That's better than I've had in the past, right? It's kind of scary from an instructor standpoint when I ask that question and like 2 people raise their hand. It's like, oh boy, it's going to be an interesting semester. Come on in. So in terms of calendars, it's good. You're already keeping one. Maybe some of you keep paper calendars. My wife insists on keeping a paper calendar. It drives me nuts because I don't keep a paper calendar and she changes things on the calendar and I don't know that she changed them. It's kind of a problem, right? So you can look at my phone. Periodically I go over to her calendar and I take pictures of her calendar so I know what's going on, right? Because she changes stuff. So generally it's a good idea to keep different calendars for your work, for your school, right? For your personal life. It helps keep you organized, right? When you can, subscribe to calendars, right? That helps a great deal because you don't actually have to put anything in, and when things change, they just show up, right? This class has a subscription calendar. I've already put in what's going on, where all the lectures are. I haven't put the assignments in yet because I fluctuate the due dates of those assignments a little bit. But the exercises are there. All of that stuff you can subscribe to. So you have your phone, you have your iPad, etc., right? You can subscribe right to it. Shows up on your calendar. You see, here's all the lecture days. Here's what we're talking about. Life is great, right? Hopefully some of your other professors do that as well. I don't know, but at least I do, okay? Make sure your calendars sync across the devices that you use. Obviously, this is not for paper calendars, right? There's a big problem there. It doesn't sync, right? But if you have, right, if you have your iPhones and your iPads and your computers, make sure that whatever calendar you use works on everything. Because if it doesn't work on everything, then you're stuck with, oh, this is the one device that I can use and I have to work with. So Google, Yahoo, Outlook calendars are all online. They're very full-featured. They're all free. Chances are you have one of those 3 accounts as an email address anyway. So if you don't already have a calendar, this is a good place to start. Sunrise Calendar is an app that you can install on your phone. The reason I like it is because every morning it sends me an email with this is the stuff that's going on your calendar today. So it's a quick summary of, hey, this is what's going on, right? It's a nice feature. You might like it, you might not like it. Maybe try it, okay? iCloud, if you have the Apple ecosystem, of course you can be in iCloud and it syncs to all your devices, etc. So here's an example of a Google Calendar. It looks essentially the same right now. It looks like a calendar. Shocking, right? If we move on and we move to, say, Outlook's calendar, looks like a calendar, right? If you're using Windows 10, obviously Outlook is the equivalent of the whole iCloud thing on the Windows side. Okay? Yahoo Calendar looks like Yahoo Calendar. Okay? You get the idea. Let's talk about email. And again, I'm trying to get you organized. You can see the theme of this, right? The average person has 3 email accounts. How many people have at least 3 email accounts? How many people have more than 3 email accounts? Okay? Generally, it's 1 for friends and family. 1 is given to you by your work or your school, right? You guys all have a school email, such as it is. And then generally you have some other account that you like started when you were 16 or whatever that says, you know, sexy hot dude, 1, 2, 3. You know, that might not be the one that you use for your resume, okay? The number of emails sent by humanity per day is 196.3 billion. That's a lot of emails, okay? The average person sends and receives 121 emails a day. I hope you're all lower on that scale. Right? Somebody has to balance me out because I get about 350 emails a day. Somehow at DVC, the faculty group has decided that the reply all is a really good thing. which I don't particularly like. I think on my DVC email gets like 180 emails a day. It's ridiculous, right? And so it's delete, delete, delete. Anyway, so what can we do about that, right? Maybe strip down your inboxes into as few emails as possible. It doesn't mean that you have to delete your email address or make it go away. Just take those old email accounts and forward your email to another account, right? So you're really only checking maybe 1 or 2 accounts. Helps with organization, gets it all in one place, right? Decide what an appropriate email address is for you. You're all of college age now. It's probably time to have a professional looking email, right? That would be a good thing to establish now such that you can use it going forward, okay? So you want to decide on that. Enable spam filters. Be aggressive about unsubscribing. It doesn't always work. There's actually a great TED video if you guys are looking for a waste of 15 minutes, right? Look up. Sometimes I feel like I should give this stuff as homework because it's entertaining. There's a guy that was out there that tried to track down what happens with these spam emails. And it's a great talk about how he starts to engage people that are trying to scam him through these spam emails. Anyway, it's really funny. It's worth watching. Anyway, so be aggressive about that sort of thing. The less spam and stuff you get, the better, right? Just stuff you don't have to see. All right, so if you wanted to forward your email, for example, this is in Google. If you go to your forwarding and IMAP settings, right, you can check a box right here for forward a copy of your incoming mail to a specific address, right? That basically takes one account and puts it all into another account, right? It's really, really useful. I would recommend doing something similar to this with your school email because chances are you don't check your school email as much as you think you should. Let me go back one slide. Yeah, it's right here. So your school email, once you get into it, has something that looks similar to this, right? You can start your forwarding and you can forward it to whatever email address you actually use, right? That way you're for sure going to get those emails, okay? Something to be aware of, something that you can certainly do, right? The other thing is to use an email client that lets you get through your email quickly, right? You access your email on your computer, you access it on your phone, you access it on your iPad. If you have a client that lets you really quickly go through it, that can help, right? I used to recommend an app called Mailbox, which got by Dropbox, and then they discontinued it, so we can't recommend that anymore, but it was great. But this other app called Spark kind of took its place. It's something that I use. It's only available on your phones and your iPads or your Androids, etc. Not on your computers. They're working on that version of it. But essentially what it allows you to do is when you have your emails, it's gesture-based, so you can swipe to different sides and you can fly through your email rather quickly, which is nice. You can also choose things like snooze for a certain length of time, and then it'll pop back into your inbox and remind you later. This is something I use very, very frequently. Right? Something happens related to school. I don't want to deal with it. It's on the weekend. Snooze until next Monday. And then it comes back in your inbox next Monday, and you don't have to see it anymore. So it's a really good app. It's free. Might be worth your time to download and try it out. Google Voice, another service that can be useful. You guys all know that I gave you my phone number the first day. Well, guess what? It's not my real cell phone number, right? It's a Google Voice number. And the nice thing here is you can forward it to your text message. You can give it to people. Let's say you're doing Craigslist transactions and you don't really want to give somebody your actual phone number. You can give them a Google Voice number, right? It will transcribe voicemails. So if you call, it'll listen to what you say, transcribe it into text, and then email it to you. So you don't actually have to listen to somebody's voicemail. And it's all free. It's kind of a cool feature, right? You can get it if you have a Gmail account. OK. So let's talk more about the web and how it works, etc. I know today's a rather long lecture, but the lab is a little short, so bear with me. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about how the internet works. Okay? This is what the internet looks like. Anybody watch Mr. Robot? Okay? It's a pretty good show. I just started it, right? But you see these kinds of things in that show. It's rare that shows actually show these sorts of things. But basically, we have something called the DNS system. And what this does is it translates, when you type wikipedia.com, it translates it into the numeric number server address that hosts the information. So Wikipedia exists, right, in a series of these little computers somewhere in a data center. Okay? But instead of trying to remember, oh, I want to go to Wikipedia, it's 66 dot what, 230 dot what, that's too hard. So we type in wikipedia.org, and this phone book system called DNS, right, translates that for us. That's how we get to a particular web page or a particular computer. It's kind of convenient. So we access it via a web browser. You guys are familiar with web browsers. You use them all the time, right? Internet Explorer comes on Windows machines. It may be better in Windows 10, but historically it's awful. Okay? So you might consider using something like Chrome, which is done by Google. Chrome is built on something called WebKit. It's the fastest way of browsing. It's the technology. It's also the same as what OS X uses or Apple uses in their platform. Same WebKit. So Safari and Chrome are essentially very, very similar under the hood in terms of how they work. Firefox is an independent company. It's okay. It's not too bad. Right? It was great about 10 years ago when there was no other options, but Chrome came along. So there is some other browser called Opera. Whatever. So one of the things that we have to be really careful of is, and this is a little bit of an old slide, okay? Because now, anytime you try to do anything on your computer, something pops up and says, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to open this file that you downloaded whenever? Are you sure, right? That's all security. It's trying to prohibit you from doing bad things, okay? Because we don't want you to install malware and your computer to become part of a botnet, et cetera, okay? So you have to be careful of dangerous scripting languages and stuff like that. Internet Explorer was historically bad at this sort of thing. Like they would let websites do stuff to your computer and whatever. A lot of that's changed. Okay. The other thing is on any one of these web browsers, you can install extensions that can help you do things, password managers, ad blockers, that sort of stuff. So it can be useful, right? And then you want to think about how fast the browser is. The truth is now they're all pretty fast. No big deal. So let's talk about Wi-Fi. There's obviously Wi-Fi on campus, right? There's Wi-Fi at Starbucks, et cetera. And chances are you've connected to it. How many people have connected to Wi-Fi somewhere? Right? Okay? You've all done it. Okay? That's great. I get an internet connection. You would be shocked at the number of times that I turn on my computer and I connect to Wi-Fi, especially here, and I see 6 or 7 other computers that are wide open sharing their files. Okay? Well, guess what? A public Wi-Fi isn't a secure place to have your computer unless you're actively thinking about it, right? So you want to make sure you turn off things like file sharing, right? I've always been tempted to just write little notes and put them on people's desktops or something like, hey, guess what? I can see your computer, right? But I haven't. Okay? It's something you want to be aware of. So whenever you're at a public hotspot, they are inherently not secure, right? People love to access things. People love to sniff your content, what's going on, right? Now, chances of you sitting at Starbucks and somebody really looking over your shoulder is probably not that high, but it can happen, so it's worth being aware of, right? File sharing is a big problem. Obviously, if you log into a bank, you see the little green lock sign in your browser, you're good. It doesn't matter where you are, okay? So do you have an alternative? Maybe. We'll talk about that in a second. The other thing is, how many people live in an apartment building or someplace where they can see a bunch of other Wi-Fi networks? Right? Have you ever noticed that like half of them don't have passwords or anything? Right? That's very, very common. Right? Recognize that your home network, if you don't have a password, isn't secure. Right? Or if you have the default passwords, that's not really secure either because everybody knows that the default passwords for a Linksys are admin admin or a Netgear is admin password. Right? Those are just known things. Okay? You want to make sure you use good security, at least 128-bit WPA and security on your Wi-Fi network. Helps people not to get in. WEP was an old standard that you can crack, right? So you just want to be current. So sometimes you really want to secure yourself on a public network, right? And you can do this using something called a virtual private network technology. And this is something that you can pay for. And what it does is it allows you to be encrypted to a specific out point. So I could be at Starbucks, connect to a VPN, and it would tunnel through encrypted to a place that it goes out to the internet. Okay? So this serves a variety of functions. It can allow you to be as anonymous as possible online, right? So if you're a political activist and you really don't want the current administration looking over your shoulder at what you're doing, this is a way of getting some privacy. Now, is it private from like the NSA looking over your shoulder? No, right? But it's reasonably private, and that's good, right? Certainly private for, Walmart's not going to be looking over your shoulder or something like that. Oh, what did they buy, right? No, there's not going to be any of that, okay? The other thing that you can do, and this is something that actually is more valuable than you think, is that you can switch your geographic location. And I can show you a live example of this a little bit later on if you want. But you can say, instead of being in the United States, for example, my computer is accessing the internet via Italy, right? Or the Netherlands, or the UK, right? In the old days when Spotify wasn't in the US, if you wanted to listen to Spotify, right, you could pretend you were in the UK by going through a private network that came out in the UK, and you could listen to Spotify, right? Maybe you want to watch a baseball game or watch an NBA game that's not in your geographic area, so you can't do it, right? It's blocking you from that content. You can switch where you come out to a different location in the United States, so you can see that particular content. So it's certainly something worth thinking about. There's a variety of companies that do this. They all cost a little fee. It may or may not be worth it for you. This is essentially how it works. Normally, your computer goes to the internet unencrypted. In this case, it goes encrypted to wherever the out point is, and then it's unencrypted after there. The difference is, the reason they say it's anonymous is because the company doesn't log or track anything. So if somebody were tracking your internet activity, it would go back to that company, but it wouldn't go from that company to you, if that makes sense. OK, so passwords. One more doom and gloom speech, and then I'll be done. OK, so Russian hackers now have 1.2 billion clear text passwords. You might have heard this. Okay? The average internet user has at least 27 accounts and 6.5 passwords. How many people have more than 6.5 passwords? 2, 3, right? This is a problem, right? Most normal passwords can be cracked in about 90 seconds. Okay? The stuff on Mr. Robot is true. Okay? Easy to crack because we know a lot about how people do passwords. 1 in 10 passwords is a name and a year. Anybody fall under this category? Nobody wants to admit it, right? I see a few nodding heads, OK? 2 in 1,000 passwords is the word password. Love is the most common verb in a password. Hate's 12 times less likely to be used than love. OK? The most popular adjectives in a password: sexy, hot, and pink. Yeah. So the thing about it is, every time you guys have heard these data breaches, right? Oh, the Russian hacker stole a bunch of passwords, or LinkedIn screwed up and let out a bunch of passwords, or Target got hacked and all their passwords got out, right? You've heard this stuff in the news, right? Okay, and you're like, oh, sweet, it wasn't me, right? I didn't get the notice. Life is good, right? Well, there's a lot of people out there. Do you think maybe one of those people use a password kind of similar to yours, or use the same word that was in a password as yours? Right? If that's the case, then it's very likely that this goes into a dictionary of words that have been used in passwords before. Well, if a hacker was trying to crack your computer, right, or a particular account, brute force, whatever, right, they go through that dictionary list first, because those are the most likely places that your password would exist. Okay? So there's a PC right now that can do 8.2 billion password combinations each second. So you can start to see how fast these can happen when you're in computer technology, right? The more passwords that are leaked, the smarter the cracking software becomes, because more clear text passwords equals more known password combinations, right? So we're kind of in a problem here. Okay? Here's the computer that can crack those that fast. Right? It doesn't look very exciting, but it can do it. OK, so the following can be easily cracked. Okay? These are all tricks that people use for their passwords. Right? They write mustache and then write it backwards. Right? Looks like a pretty complicated password, right? Okay, well, this is a known trick. So if you're trying to crack a computer, this is one of the tricks that you would employ when you're trying to brute force. Substitutions for letters and numbers and stuff. This is another thing people do. Right? Super with a 3. Right? These are the kinds of things that people come up with that they think are secure, but they're not really. Okay? Any combination of these strategies, no good. Okay? OMG, I'm... Right? Solutions. You should never use the same password twice. And you're going, oh, God, this is a problem. Right? You want to use a password that contains numbers, letters, and symbols, right? You need to make the password completely random. Yeah, that kind of sucks, doesn't it? Okay, so what do? Right? If you really want to do this, you can't remember them. I promise you, you can't remember them. You're going to have to use a password manager. Okay, and that's what, there's the variety of companies that do this. The password manager that I use is 1Password. It's fantastic. I love it. And what it does is it takes the 300 plus internet accounts that I have, which is true, okay, and it makes every single one, it records every password for them all, right? When I sign up for an account, I generate a random string password. I've gotten to the point where I use 24-character random string passwords. They look like complete gibberish. Nobody could ever, other than brute force, one letter at a time, could never crack them. Okay, so you're talking NSA is going to crack them, not anybody else. Okay, so I don't have to remember all of those individual passwords. They're unique for each site that I go to. They're really long random strings. I'm great. I'm secure. But I have to do some stuff every time I want to use a password. Right? On my computer, on my iPad, on my phone, it's great. They're tied to my thumbprint. Right? I say I want my password, give it my thumbprint, life is great. Okay? On the computer, I have to have a master password, so I've actually memorized a 16-character random string password. Took a while, but I remember that one, and as long as I know that one, I'm in good shape. Okay? So it's one random password to access all the rest of my password. Now, if I'm on the school computer, it's a little annoying. Okay? And I'll admit that. Because I have to take my phone, I have to bring up my 1Password, I have to look at the password, and then I have to copy the random string of numbers into the computer to log in. It's a little annoying, but I'm willing to sacrifice that for the added security of doing this. Now, are there some websites that I don't use a particularly complicated password for? Yeah, because I don't want to have to worry about it. Right? But I'm going to pick those deliberately as, oh, let's go ahead and use a simple password. Okay? So just be aware. This is what 1Password looks like. Right? It stores all of your information. It's great. It stores your credit cards and stuff too. Some people have elected to use the built-in password storage solutions offered by Microsoft, OS X, etc. The disadvantage of one of those is you're subject to however much you trust that particular company. Right? These kinds of third-party apps tend to be verified by security experts before they go out. Their security is higher, etc. So it's up to you. A good password manager will encrypt all your password, will integrate with every device that you use, right? Will generate complex random passwords with numbers, symbols, and letters, right? Create separate passwords for each online account, and have a desktop and a mobile version. I promise I'm almost done. Okay? Passwords are becoming more common on, this is two-factor authentication. Okay? Anybody tried to log into their bank and their bank said, I need to text you a verification code. Right? That's called two-factor authentication. It's trying to make sure you really are you, right? By making you verify who you are on two different devices. Right? So they'll text you a code, and you have to type in your password. This is a lot more secure, but it's a pain. Right? Because you got to wait for that text message, and then you got to copy it, etc. Right? But this is really more secure. So the best case, two-factor authentication, you have a completely random string of passwords that's stored in your password manager, and they text you the thing. Then you're pretty darn secure. No surprise that banks do it. If you want to read, here's a couple of articles that are on the password security. Some of them are a little older, but they're still relevant. And you can, of course, click on these a little bit later on. OK, so we're going to today start to talk about and have you in lab work on branding yourself. OK, so what I want you to do right now is I want you to pull up your computer, go to Google, and I want you to type in your name. Anybody top hit themselves? Nope. If you look at me, right, I died in a sunbed accident. That sucks. Your name. So the reason that I ask you to do this in the first place is that these online search engines actually determine who you are online, right? And they do it for you. So if you don't actively establish your own identity, there's a pretty good chance Google will do it for you. And if you had some employer that was looking you up, right, and they got the wrong you, that would be a problem. So you really want to be aware of this stuff. And we're going to talk about how do we improve this. So we want to establish our identity, right? Maybe we want to have a primary website. We'll talk about personal landing pages in a second. Maybe we use the same username across a bunch of sites. Maybe we just cross-link, right? So we have a Vimeo account. We cross-link it to your YouTube account, right? You start to connect yourself together online, right? The good news is if you buy your own website, you can have your own domain name. Grant at digitaltoolsforarchitects.com, that's me, right? Grant at grantadams.net, it's me too, right? So you can control yourself that way, which is nice, right? Costs a little bit of money to do that, right? And you're not subject to some company going out of business or discontinuing email or something along those lines. When you're thinking about your names, you want it to reflect you somehow, right? So grantadams.net, it's very me, right? So if I want Grant at grantadams.net, that's pretty good, right? My company website, Aco Properties, Grant at acoproperties.com, right? Whatever it is. So you can control that. That's a good thing. You don't want to be too long, right? You want to think about what the extension is. Are there any competing websites? That sort of thing as well. If you wanted to do this, you'd go to a domain name registrar. You'd search for your domain name, and then you'd say, yes, I want to register this domain name. You can register it for a minimum of 1 year up to, I think, 15 years, right? And it'll ask you to renew and whatever. These are companies that do it. Namecheap is the cheapest one. I go with them, right? Save the money if I can. But there's a bunch of other ones. You probably have heard of GoDaddy before. They do the Super Bowl commercials, right? This is what they do. They register domain names, okay? A personal landing page, and this is something that you guys will actually create today as part of the exercise, is a page that you control, right, that then links to other pages that represent you. So you're associating your name with the stuff you create, which brings up your Google ranking of you, which is a good thing, okay? So you can manage who you are, you can claim projects that are you, and you can control how internet, i.e. Google, sees you. So let's look at some personal landing pages. We're going to use flavors.me. It's free, which is great. But it also has a good element of design to it. So it looks prettier than a Facebook page or a Google Plus page or something like that. Okay? So we're all in the design field, so we want stuff that looks cool. So that's why we're going to do it. Okay, so here's a bunch of examples that I'll scroll through that show you. And these, you can see, are kind of based on a similar template. But you have a lot of flexibility. You have the background picture, you have different fonts. You can kind of control that and work through to create some kind of a brand of who you are. And this is just a landing page that you could put on, say, a business card. It would take people here, and they could see everything that there is to know about you. Okay? And you can see that they're all different, which is the idea. Okay, so get your name out there, right? If you want Google to better associate who you are with the stuff you create, you want to make sure that you're cross-listing your stuff. Okay, so for example, after you create your personal landing page today in class, you're going to log into the Digital Tools site, and under Homepage in your personal profile, you'll put in your Flavors address. You're also going to do a LinkedIn profile. You're going to put that in. And then every time you post content on the Digital Tools site, which gets crawled by Google, right, your name, your picture, and little links to your stuff show up. So Google starts to associate who you are with those things that you create. That's the idea. Okay? So we're going to update our site-specific profiles. Okay? Likewise, when you make comments on things, it also gives you those backlinks, which are great. So one last privacy-related thing. And that is that you guys realize that when you post something on Facebook or Instagram or any of those sites, that you no longer have control of that picture. It exists forever. I am forever thankful that that didn't exist when I was an undergrad in college. At that point in time, you still had to print pictures, right? So that's a good thing. So you can't see weird random pictures of me online because it didn't exist. For all of you, you do have to deal with that, right? And this is a problem twofold. Number one, just think about what you post online. Right? If you post a really embarrassing photo of yourself and it exists in 10 years when you're trying to look for a job and somebody looks it up, probably not the right thing to do. Right? Even if you make your accounts private, no, I'm on Instagram, but I'm private. I only have my friends and whatever. Every once in a while, Facebook or whoever owns the companies at the time might change their policies. You guys probably don't remember this, but a number of years ago, Facebook changed their policy and opened everybody's accounts for about 2 weeks. And then they got such a backlash that they had to close everybody's accounts. So the point is you're subject to whatever they do, right? It's not you anymore. So just be aware. Don't do bad things, right? The other thing to be aware of is that your friends can post bad pictures of you too. And they can tag you in those bad pictures, and those exist online. Right? A little bit harder to get rid of those. What else can you do? You can set up your own email, grant@digitaltoolsforarchitects.com. It's a little bit better than grant1234@gmail.com. It's a little more professional, something that you can choose to do. And you can do it through Google services or Zoho services that deal with the whole email concept. If it's something you're interested in, we can go through it. We don't need to talk through that right now. Okay? And the key in all of this is to be a really good content creator. And the better you are at doing that, the more people are going to want to look at your stuff. And the better your rankings will be in Google. So you want to focus on actually building stuff. After you've cross-listed, make sure you do good stuff. And then people will see it, and they'll associate it. OK, so I know I went a little long today, and I apologize for that. We're going to take a break now for, say, 15 minutes or so. Actually, let's do 20. Let's come back at 9:30 or 19 minutes. Okay? And we'll start back up at 9:30. I'll walk you through how we're going to do the various things that we're going to do as part of your exercise 102 today. Okay? Any questions? All right. Okay, so we're going to start back up, and this is set up in a variety of steps today. And I know it seems daunting because it's a two-sided handout, but a lot of the stuff will go rather quickly. And so I'm going to start demoing a few of the things. I'll probably do a few things out of order in the process, but first I want to set up the OneDrive system so that it will work on your flash drive or whatever. So you want to make sure that you plug in your flash drive or your hard drive or whatever it is that you plan to use in this class. And then I have actually written up on the Digital Tools site, so if you get lost, and I just changed this one, I just rewrote it, but if you go to Tutorials, Digital Life 0.2, it will, if it loads, will walk you through the steps that are necessary for setting this up. I didn't log in yet. Of course, I should have logged in first, so hold on a second. And then the pictures will be there. There we go. So I have pictures that'll walk you through exactly what we're doing right now as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to click on the little OneDrive cloud icon. So I've clicked on the little triangle that points up, and then there'll be a OneDrive cloud icon. And unfortunately, I already set these up, so I may have to unset it up. Let me hold on a second. Let me go to Settings, and let me delete this account. Yeah, unlink OneDrive. All right, let me try it one more time so that you guys can see me do it. And when you first do it, you should get this icon. This Setup OneDrive icon should show up. I have two accounts. I have a faculty account and I have a personal account. I'm going to show you as if I was doing it from a personal account, but again, you will probably want to do it from your 4CD account, Insight, whatever your Insight email is, because that'll give you a little bit more space. So you'll type your Insight email address in here. I'm doing, like I said, my personal account, and then you'll click on Sign In. It's a little slow in the sign-in process, so you just have to be a little patient. And it's possible that it will ask you on the next screen if this is a work or a school account. Or a personal account. Chances are if you're using your Insight email, it's a school account. If not, it'll just come straight through to this personal here. Okay, so once you get to this next page here, this is where we're going to want to pay attention. So this is your OneDrive folder. There's a button for change location. So we're going to click on the link for change location. And at this point, we can choose to put our OneDrive on our flash drive. So if I go to this PC and I go to, this happens to be my hard drive, but you would pick your flash drive or your hard drive. And you can then put your OneDrive on that location, so on that drive letter. Okay? One of the things that you're going to have to be careful of, though, is when you plug in your flash drive or your hard drive, you want to make sure you always plug it into the same USB port. There's 4 on the front of these computers. Pick one and always plug it into that one. I think Windows 10 is better than Windows 7 or prior versions in remembering which drive letter your drive is. But just to be careful about it, it's a good strategy. So I'm going to go ahead and put it right here in my folder. And once I'm done, it'll say, in my case, it says I:/OneDrive. So that folder exists on my external drive. When I'm done, I'll go ahead and click Next. It's going to ask you if you want to sync all of your files or parts of your files, depending on what's in your current account. You can choose to do part or all. At least you'd want your school folder to be syncing, etc. Once you're done, you'll go ahead and click on Next. And then you can say Open my OneDrive folder. The online tour we don't need to do. And you'll see that now you have a OneDrive account, and it has your stuff in it that you've been working on, or this is where you will start saving your stuff. Okay? So it's a relatively simple thing to do. It is possible that it won't save your password the next time you log into the computer. We'll have to see. Remember, next week I'm going to assign seats, or have you guys pick your seats and then stay in them. We'll unlock the computers, make sure that all this stuff sticks, and then as long as you sit in the same seat, it should come back up when you log back into the computers. So anyway, that's setting up the OneDrive as part of your stuff. This will allow you to always have a backup of your stuff, which is the primary idea. Okay? So when we move on to part 2, I want you to subscribe to a calendar. And so let me go ahead and come up here. Depending on which calendar system you're in, you want to follow different tutorials. I'm going to go to Digital Life 0.5. Okay? And this talks through how do you subscribe to the school's calendar or this class's calendar feeds. Okay? You guys are in the morning, so this is going to be your link right there that you're going to use. Depending on whether you're in Outlook or whether you're in, those are, let's see, down here, Google Calendar, right? Yahoo Calendar, there's different sets of directions. So if I were to log into, let's see, a Gmail account, let me go to Gmail, and let me sign in. And again, this is where my password manager is a little bit annoying because I have to look down at my phone and type in this string of passwords. So hold on a second for me here. Okay, so I've logged into Gmail. I'm going to go to Calendar. And so over here in the right, this happens to be Gmail's version. I'm picking Gmail because most of you have Gmail, but if you have trouble with Outlook, it's all similar, very similar process. I want to jump over to Calendar. And so this little square will take me to Calendar. Once I get to Calendar, and you can see that I've already subscribed to this calendar before. So let me go to Calendar Settings. Let me get rid of this calendar so that I can do it again. I can find where delete the calendar is. All right, well, we'll just pretend to add it again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right here under Other Calendars, and I'm going to say Add by URL, and it's going to ask me the URL. This is where I need, if I go back to the digital life here, that link. I'm going to copy that link. I'm going to go to my Google Calendar, and I'm going to paste it in here. One of the things to be really careful of when you paste is that it doesn't have any extra space at the end or any extra space at the beginning. Right? If you have extra space, it won't work. And then I'll go ahead and say Add Calendar. And when I do that, in a little bit, it should refresh, and I should see that calendar showing up, much like I have it showing up here. My guess is that nothing's changed because I already have this calendar in my account. But you should see it there as well. If you're in Outlook Calendar or if you're in Yahoo Calendar, it's very, very similar. The process is similar. Okay? So if you need specific instructions on either of those, you can scroll to the appropriate set of steps that are available for you in Digital Life 0.05 calendar feeds. So that is part 2. In part 3, I asked you to consider consolidating your email accounts. There's no way for me to verify that you do it or don't do it, but it's there if you want to do it as a step. Okay? Part 4. Right? We're going to create a LinkedIn account. How many people already have a LinkedIn account? Okay. LinkedIn is a professional resume building website. It's very much in the mainstream of once you go to get a job and that sort of thing, having a LinkedIn profile is very useful. I'm not big on pushing you guys to sign up for Facebook or anything else, but I think LinkedIn has professional implications and it's worth signing up. What it will do is it will create your identity, and it will let you build basically a resume of yourself. So in this case, linkedin.com/in/Grant A. Adams is me. If you go to me, right, you can see there's a picture of myself. There's information about what I do, the companies that I've worked for, my education, etc. And as I scroll down, this is very much like a resume. I've got experience in a variety of things that I've done, right? You have honors and awards. You can put your publications, etc. You can put skills in. You put in your education, if you have interests or those kinds of things. Okay. I'm not expecting you to have a full profile, but I want you to start this and at least start yourself. When you log in to your LinkedIn profile, right, it's a little bit different. And let's see. Yes, they're just okay. Just close that and go away. Okay, once you're in your account, there's lots of these little pencil-looking things that allows you to edit any one of these fields, right? The other thing is right down here at the bottom of your picture, it may show up over here on your right if you haven't done it before, but you can specify an actual address for your account. So instead of having a random string of numbers, in my case, I have linkedin.com/in/Grant A. Adams, okay? If you specify that then becomes your LinkedIn your profile address. If somebody were to go to that, they'd see your profile, right? And you can see down here, there's more stuff. I could add more information about a variety of things. And you see that I have editing capabilities, essentially, at this point. Once I have this address, I'm going to copy this address. And then I'm going to go to my Digital Tools website. Okay. And I'm going to go to my dashboard. And again, all of this is written out in step 4. So if you get a little lost, I'm going to go to my profile. And if you changed your password last class, you probably are aware that this stuff exists, or at least you scrolled past it. There's an option for LinkedIn, and I'm going to paste my LinkedIn link there. And what this does is when I create a post, and let me go ahead and view one of my posts. This was my post from last class here. You see that on the right side, there's a picture of me, but then there's these little icons that show up, and there's one that says in on it. That's my LinkedIn profile. So now it's associating what I created on this website with my LinkedIn profile. So again, all of this is helping build who you are and brand yourself. If you click on that little blue box, it'll take you to my LinkedIn profile. Okay, that's the idea of the cross-linking. The alternative to that is your host or your website, and this should be your flavors.me page, which is right here. Now, during the break, I was trying to log into my Flavors page, and it was giving me a server error. So there may be something wrong with their site. This is the nature of this class. It's a computer class. Sometimes stuff goes wrong. So if you guys are able to do it at the flavors.me page, you will put your Flavors page there as well. I'm going to go ahead and try to click on it and see if it actually loads or whether it gives me an error. No, it loaded. So they must have been doing some kind of maintenance. So this is my flavors.me page. And so you see my information here. And then there are a variety of links that I've set up. So I've moved from step 4 into step 5. Let me flip it over. Right? There is a step-by-step tutorial for what's going on the website under Tutorials Digital Life 0.12 that will walk you through how the flavors.me page works and the setup of that. But essentially, you're going to have a lot of flexibility about what you create. So when you initially go to the flavors.me page, you get this. You'll click on the Start Your Website button, and that will take you to a place where you start your website. Okay? If I were to click on it, it's going to take me to my account because I already have an account, and it's already been worked on. But over here, we've got information. This is stuff about you. So I have Grant Adams, which is right there. The cool thing about this is you can see, like if I edited it and I put A in, you can see that it would add right there. So what you see and how you edit immediately shows up on the page. Okay? So as you change it, which is a pretty neat feature. Oops. So there we go. And I put down here Associate Professor of Architecture, etc. Okay? Then we can come down to Contact, right? Sometimes you get stuff like this where it asks you to upgrade. For the nature of this class, I never want you to have to pay for anything if I can help it. So you don't need the premium account. So if it says pay for this feature, just ignore it and you don't have to do it. Make sense? So we're not going to do Contact, right? Links here, right? If you wanted to have a link to an external website, those show up right down here at the bottom, right? You can put in a link to an extra website. Okay? I'm going to go ahead from here, and I'm going to skip the rest of this stuff, and I'm going to go to Content. Okay? And in Content, I'm going to click on Add. Oh, and I already have 5 services. Let me go ahead and manage and get rid of one of these for a second here. Get rid of this. Okay. And so under Content, I'm going to click on Add, and it's going to give me a list of services that I can add. What we're looking for is something called RSS. It's an orange button. It says RSS on it. And it's going to ask me for a feed URL. And so what this feed URL is, and you can get this information from the Digital Tools site. If we go to the 0.12 that I was talking about, it's going to be right here. Okay? And so what we're looking for is digitaltoolsforarchitects.com/author/ and then right here under where it says author name is whatever you use to log into the Digital Tools site, whatever your username is. Right? So for me, in this case, it's grant.adams/feed/. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And wait, wrong browser. There. And so right here in the feed URL, I'm going to paste there. And remember, I have to change author name. It's going to be grant.adams. And then I'll click Connect. And it's going to say adding feed. Chances are if it doesn't add correctly, you have a space somewhere or something that's not registering correctly. But this does take a little bit of time. See, this is the kind of thing that happens, right? So they weren't able to add the feed. I'll try again in a second. The other possibility is that I had a space before the characters here. Let me confirm here that it works. Yep. So you can confirm that your address is correct. So that address is correct, but for some reason they're having issues doing it. We'll try it one more time. Nope, apparently I have bad luck today. So if you aren't able to add it, such is life. The idea is if you are able to add it, when you click on it, you will see showing up here all of the posts that you've made on the Digital Tools site. So you don't have to do anything, and all of your content from our site shows up on this site, right? Which is a great way of doing it. So for example, I have linked in all of my lectures. So if you were to click on this, there's my lectures. All of the lectures show up one after the other on this page. So everything that I've done, right, automatically shows up on this particular page, which is the idea. You could connect it to your Twitter stream if you wanted. So every time you tweet, stuff would show up there. That's up to you. You can connect it to your Instagram. You can connect it to a variety of things. You may or may not want that to be public information, right? Once you have your page set up the way you like it, let me get rid of this for a second so I can go back to just the basic page. There it is. Once you have it set up the way you like it, I want you to copy this address. And again, you're going to put it into your profile, which I have over here, under your website. So you put that right there. And so now that exists as a link to your website as well. Okay? So we have that. We have your LinkedIn, those two things. But I do want you to create one post for today. And in order to create the post, I want to take a screenshot of this page so that it's easy for people to see it. Okay? So if I type down here in the search windows, if I type screen capture, I'll get the snipping tool, or I guess I could type snipping tool, right? Which will allow us to create a new snip. So I'll click on new, and I will select my flavors page, like that. You see that I now have a little image of it. I can go ahead and say File, Save As. I'm going to save it to my OneDrive folder. And we'll call this A135, Exercise 102. And I'll go ahead and click Save. There it is. After that's done, then I can actually create the post. So I'll go to New Post. And this would be Exercise 102. And I'm going to scroll down to the bottom on the right, select my featured image, and I'm going to upload that file that I just saved. So once again, let me go to OneDrive. There it is. And as soon as it's done loading here, I can click on the Set Featured Image button. So I'll go ahead and set the featured image. Once the featured image shows up, I want to make sure that I categorize correctly. So I'll come back up here to Categories, and I'm going to come down here to Exercise 102, Digital Tools for Designers, and then I'll click Publish. I didn't actually write anything in here because I don't need anything here. I just have the image. Though maybe it would be helpful to go ahead and put my link in from my flavors page. So let me copy this. And let me paste it right here. Oops, didn't like me. I'll go ahead and link that so that somebody could go to it if they wanted to. Okay? Then I'll go ahead and publish, and that'll be my post for today. Okay? Part 6, I talk about if you want to, I already did that. Okay. Under Part 6, Step 9, I talk about if you want your little picture to show up, there's a separate website that allows you to upload your picture. If that's something that's interesting to you, you can do it. It's completely optional. You don't have to. Okay, so you can skip on that. The last thing is that next class we're going to start taking pictures, and we're going to learn about photographic compositions and whatever. We won't actually do any post-processing. We won't do any Photoshop work next Monday. But I want you to bring your cameras because during the lab portion of the day, I'm going to send you off onto campus to take pictures. Okay? Because in order to learn Photoshop, we have to have some pictures to work with to begin. Okay? So I want you to bring your camera. If you have a camera that's its own camera, that's great. If all you have is your cell phone camera, chances are that'll work fine too. If you don't have either, then we'll pair you up with somebody that does have one. Okay? So it's not required that you have a camera, but it would be nice if you had your own. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'll turn you loose. I know there's a lot still to cover, but we still have an hour left of class for you to do it. So I think you guys won't have a hard time finishing in that time period. Any questions? Yeah, I'll come around and I'll help you all in just a second.